Jesse Peterson, how are you today?
Jesse, pleasure to meet you. My name's Michael.
Michael
Galifianakis, you can call me Mike.
Great. Go ahead and come on over here. You can have a seat right here.
Excellent. So, have you had a chance to explore the Boston area at all during these talks?
Right, Mike. So, this is my first time kind of coming in on the deal. Obviously, personnel from both sides have been involved, and now I guess it's just kind of up to us to tie up the loose ends. They save the best for last, isn't that right?
I suppose so.
Yeah.
In the event that we're able to reach an agreement today, do you find yourself actually relocating to the Boston area along with Disco?
Probably not, just because of my position in the company. I'm pretty satisfied with where I'm at, but yeah, definitely a nice location here in Boston.
Well, you may have noticed in your first few days here, the people can be quite brash and to the point, but I really view that as one of my favorite aspects of living in the area, because they really don't give you any BS. They cut right to the point. And I know we've been able to make quite a few agreements so far, but that Article 22, I definitely would like to see eye to eye with you in this meeting and hopefully come to some sort of compromise that satisfies both parties. And I mentioned the personality of the Bostonites for one reason, and that's I don't want to retract or adjust any of the terms we've already agreed upon. And so before going into this, I just wanted to let you know that $5.62 per square foot on that 84,000 square foot tract, that's hands off. I'm not going to try to up the price on you or anything like that. And I really wanted to focus in on, more than anything, the subleasing issue that we find in the contract right now. Is that okay?
Absolutely, that won't be an issue at all. Really glad to hear that you have a very open mind, and we do appreciate the rate that you guys have given us. There is one issue that arises, just as you were saying that. I know that they previously negotiated a 25-year lease, and I'm not sure exactly who in the company went along with that, but 25 years is really way longer than we normally do. Typically what we stick with is more of a 5-year contract, and that beginning lease, we found that it works a lot better for us. Obviously, retail is kind of a dog-eat-dog situation.
I know.
So we need that flexibility to be able to say, hey, if for some reason Boston just isn't a good location for us, I don't want to be stuck having to assign out the place for another 20 years if after that initial 5 years we find ourselves having to leave. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You've probably noticed the majority of the smaller stores have more of a 3 to 5 year lease contract as opposed to large anchor stores such as yourself. Now, that 25-year lease period is negotiable. I'm not completely against perhaps looking at a shorter term.
Fantastic.
I just wanted to be transparent with you on this. As when it comes to funding, we do have a pension fund looking at what anchor stores we can confirm moving into Hawkins development here.
Sure, absolutely.
And they're really looking for a 10-year commitment minimum in order to guarantee those funds coming in that can help us complete construction and get some of the smaller stores in there. Now, being as it is, a 10-year term is beyond that 5-year that you mentioned. And of course, we can talk about other conditions that maybe allow some more flexibility for you in that 84,000 square foot tract. Would a 10-year term guarantee as opposed to 25 be more suitable to you, or is that beyond negotiation for you guys at Discount?
Mike, if I were in your situation, I totally understand where you're coming from. Obviously, funding is a huge part of this project, and that's going to be a very important thing for you. Honestly, just to be perfectly clear with you, I find it kind of surprising that that your financing company is requiring 10 years. I mean, typically with developers that we've worked with in the past, as long as they get at least anywhere from a 3 to 5 contract from us, being Discount stores, it's typically a go for them. So I don't know. I guess maybe I just find that kind of surprising that they're not okay with just sort of a more standard 5-year lease.
They can be rather strict in the area. We've pushed and pushed, but they've really stuck to that 10-year term period. What I did want to let you know, however, is clearly the Article 22 that you drafted up at the Discount side and our Article 22 are pretty severe ultimatums on either side of the equation. we'd be happy to look at certain conditions that can be met on the discount side in order to give you the flexibility to adjust not just the type of products you sell within that space, but even subleasing it to other companies, as long as there's no conflict of interest or direct competition with some of our smaller guys moving into the mall. Now, 84,000 square feet is a lot. Maybe not for you guys, but for some of the other stores coming in. And I'm a former Best Buy manager, so I understand the constant ebb and flow of market demand. What kind of time frame generally do you find yourself comfortable with as far as providing just those soft goods and the current discount offerings? I know earlier you said roughly a 5-year lease was what you were seeking.
Right.
Generally, for that 5 years, do you see yourself pretty comfortably locked in with that current product offering, or is it more sporadic than that?
Sure, Mike. I mean, earlier you said you just want to be transparent. I can't be any more in agreement with that. I also just want to be transparent with you so we understand where we're at on the same page. As it is right now, we do have a small amount of hard products that we already sell. So with the restriction of only being able to sell soft products as is, we wouldn't be able to move into the space.
Right.
And so obviously we are going to need some flexibility on that. Typically we don't sell a lot of it, but we do need that flexibility to be able to.
Certainly.
I mean, and you can imagine for me as signing on this deal and then going to report back to the other board of directors and letting them know, hey, we've got the 200 other locations throughout the nation on the same track, but we have this one guy in Boston who, you know, we're going to have issues with flexibility anytime we roll out a new product. And if it's too much hard goods, we won't be able to roll it out. And if we decide to have another smaller tenant within our store, whether that's, you know, makeup or candles or jewelry, you know, if we're having issues there, it's going to be a pretty hard sell for me, just as you can imagine, as a national chain.
Well, I didn't want to waste any of your time. I wanted to begin, as far as compromises from our side, with some of the most lenient, perhaps easy terms that I believe discount would be fine with without you having to double check with anybody else.
Awesome.
And these are some of the main points that I want to make sure we can agree on in order to avoid outright riots from the other stores coming in.
Sure.
And these are pretty basic. A lot of them come down to OSHA regs or basic safety as it pertains to the mall. Now, and I don't anticipate you bringing in potential subleases for stores that offer these products, but if you're comfortable with it, I'd like to write into the contract these 3 points solely. First, we want to make sure that there's no sound violations in Boston. Boston downtown, at least, they can be quite strict with noise violations that disturb the peace or the overall ambience and environment inside the mall. And so we want to guarantee whatever store you might sublease in that space, they're not playing super loud music or scaring people away nearby. The second term here is just we want to make sure that whatever product they're selling, whatever hard goods, that there's no environmental or health safety violations. And that's quite, I don't imagine you'll be bringing in toxic waste to dump or anything directly into the mall.
Absolutely.
And the third term, it may sound subjective to you at first, but we really do want to create a family-friendly shopping environment here. And so we'd want to make sure that any stores you do bring in for a portion of that space, and I'll get into more detail on that later, is generally perceived as family-friendly and not counterculture, if that makes sense.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, just sort of music to my ears. If those are the kind of things that are going to put what other worries or fears that created this impasse to rest, I think that's fantastic. I mean, we definitely stick with our culture of being a place where people are going to want to come, and I don't foresee any issues with any sort of noise violation. So, yeah, I mean, just to put those fears to rest, those shouldn't be an issue at all.
Excellent. So, well, I'm happy to hear that, and that we're not wasting each other's time at this point.
Right.
Perhaps the greatest worry in your head right now is, I was saying something in regards to a 10-year financing term, and you're looking at closer to 5 years. And I want to make sure that you can see the flexibility that we can provide for your store, because I really, although there are other anchor store offerings, I've seen the kind of foot traffic discount has provided in other large metros, and we have around 8 million people within a 30-mile radius of us here. And that foot traffic can just mosey on down to smaller shops and keep the other tenants happy. Although we are seeking a 10-year as opposed to a 25-year lease agreement, it only requires that you still have a presence of discount somewhere within that square footage. What I mean by that is you would not need to have 84,000 square feet, 100% represented by discount. You'd still be paying for that space with us, but we require only that you keep up to 50% of that square footage uniquely as a discount. What that comes down to is 42,000 square feet, up to 42,000, mind you, can be leased to one or several other stores if you find, let's say, that demand's just not as strong with some of those soft goods going forward, or if you want to diversify into some other hard goods. And being a former Best Buy manager, I've seen some of our stores turn into basically warehouses and storage areas to help with supply chain. And so as long as it has the discount name to at least half of that square footage, and we can agree to a 10-year lease period, you wouldn't have to have the 84K rented out perpetually for the full term. The minimum that we would want to see is a minimum of 5 years, as you were saying, uniquely discount before considering subleasing. Before we continue, does that 5 to 10 spread sound agreeable to you as far as what percentage of the store you would need to allocate?
Sure, Mike. I mean, I'm loving where we're going with this, and I'm feeling like we're definitely getting close, and it's fantastic to do business with someone who's willing to be open-minded and change and adjust to what needs to happen so that you guys can be successful. Obviously, if we're successful in bringing in foot traffic, you're going to be successful in making the other tenants happy and keeping your mall up and running all the time, and you're not going to have any vacant spaces. What I will say is typically if we run into an issue, I mean, obviously financially it doesn't make sense for us to come in today and then tomorrow shut off the lights. Right. It just isn't really feasible for us, and hopefully if we're here to stay. But on that odd chance that the customers in Boston area just don't respond well, I mean, the customer base for some reason just doesn't really feel the vibe, and we don't get that customer loyalty like we'd like. Sure. After a few years, then we have to have that ability to have an out. And in that case, typically what we would do is just assign out, say if after 3 years we just absolutely can't make a go of it. Well, then we'd assign out the location, the entirety of the location for the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then obviously at the end of that 5-year period, we're turning it back over to you guys, and you're able to find somebody reliable to put in our spot that is going to do a good job. I mean, honestly, because for us, if we're not making money after those 3 years, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to stick around. Right. Trying to sublet parts of it when it would be better for us just to leave and for you guys to find somebody else who's going to make a go of it in that spot.
Well, I'm definitely willing to entertain that. Ultimately, you were looking for the freedom to completely withdraw discounts presence. Right. How soon would you be looking for minimum? Does that make sense? I can rephrase that if you do.
Yeah, if you would, just so we're on the same page.
You mentioned near the beginning of our conversations, looking to have a 5-year loan term as opposed to the 25. That's light. That's generations in a retail product cycle.
Oh, absolutely.
I was talking about diminishing the 25, bring that down to a 10-year. As long as you have a unique discount presence in some portion, I cited half of that square footage. Let's say, hypothetically, if you were to keep, well, I'll give you a brief case study on this one. Are you familiar with of course, there's the small Apple stores, perhaps those, we have Albertsons Marketplace, a smaller version of their large grocery chain. We have Microsoft basically copying Apple with those small kiosk stores. Those are not 84,000 square foot kiosks. Those are closer to 10,000 square feet. Sure. What portion, for example, a third of that square footage, would you be willing to entertain to keep uniquely discount during that 10-year time frame that we're talking? If, let's say, profit margins just were where they needed to be, and you wanted to stay in the area, just not at that large degree. And I can rephrase that as well if you'd like.
I think that's time. So